All right. This being the first meeting of the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee, November 18th, 2020, just after 4 p.m. I'm Tom Kerr. I'm the Director of Public Works and Utilities, and I'll call the meeting to order since this is our first meeting. Just before we start to do the swear-ins, I'd like to go ahead and say thank you to everyone for your time, your commitment, your participation in this process. We appreciate it a great deal. I know the council appreciates it a great deal. The community does, and I know the city staff appreciates this group and efforts. I think want to kind of point out that what we're starting is a study. We want to gather information so that this committee can advise council on what can or they can be done in terms of impact fees, whether the city council wishes to or not. Will be completely at their determination in the end, and will be based, I'm sure, a lot on the committee's considerations and what we find in the study. But so I wanted to just start with that statement, and again, appreciate everyone. And I guess I'll turn this over to Norma for swearing in.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks.
If everybody could please stand and raise their right hand. According to the Secretary of State, during this pandemic, they have allowed us to do the oath of office virtually. So that's what we're going to do. So it is going to be done that way. So technically you don't need to sign, but with the witnesses here that we have on the meeting, and it'll be taken note in the minutes. They'll be recorded in the minutes as taking the oath of office. So this is an official act. So if y'all would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Gilberto Gonzalez,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties as a member of
the duties as a member of
the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee
Capital Improvement Advisory Committee
of the City of Odessa,
of the City of Odessa,
State of Texas,
State of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state.
and of the
state.
So help me God.
So help me God. Help me God.
Thank y'all very much. Y'all are officially members.
Thank you, Norma. Appreciate it very much. So to do introductions, I think it would probably, most of the committee members probably know each other. But it would probably be good for you to each just introduce yourselves briefly. So we'll go with Reverend Randall is not here. Mike Withrow, would you like to?
Yeah, I'm Mike Withrow, president of Basin Abstract and Title here in Odessa. Been in the town for 30 odd years and been very involved in doing real estate closings and transactions and process of watching the community grow and would be willing to assist in any manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Goetz. Dr. Goetz, do you want to introduce yourself or do you have more? You may be muted. Did we come back? We'll come back to Dr. Goetz. Mr. Pierce.
My name's Richard. I'm with First Service AC Contractors. Been in Odessa over 50 years.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez? Former councilman.
Hello. Hello, this is Filiberto Gonzalez. I've been in Odessa since I was about 11 years old. I'm not going to say how old I am now, but I do enjoy serving the city, and I was past city councilman, and I am State Farm agent, and I'm honored to be on this board. Thank you for allowing me to participate.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Landgraf?
John Landgraf with LCA, a consulting firm. It's been in Odessa 42 years. Very excited about the opportunities that hopefully we can bring some good vision and recommendations to the council and keep our community moving forward.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hurt?
Joe Hurt. I'm president of PVP Fabrication, and I manage the land on Ratliff Ranch. And I'm ready, and hopefully I'll be available to assist in any way I can to move Odessa forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Goetz, we'll check with you again. Are you able to come on, introduce? Maybe having microphone issues there. We appreciate your serving with us, Dr. Goetz. Appreciate all of you serving. Again, it's and it's a distinct honor for the staff to work with you as well. So for staff, for further introductions, I think we'll start with Kimley Horn because they probably have a shorter list, and then we'll move to the city staff if that'll work. John Atkins, do you want to introduce your staff? Your person?
Sure. I'll introduce everybody that's on the call right now. My name's John Atkins. I'm with Kimley Horn Associates. I'm the project manager for the project here. I've had the distinct pleasure of working with Tom Kerr and then also John Landgraf for a number of years now through some of the other planning activities at the city. I'll go ahead and let April and John and I think Connor's on too to introduce themselves. Go ahead, April.
Hi, everyone. My name is April Rose Escamilla, and I'm working with John Atkins on the water and wastewater analysis portion.
John Green.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Green.
Connor.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm working with April and John on the water wastewater as well.
Okay, Tom, that's the crew we have here right now. I think Jeff Whitaker may try to jump on. He's got a conflict right now, but may try to jump on a little bit later.
Thank you very much. We appreciate y'all's working on this project with us. Thank you, John. So I've introduced myself. We have Cindy Muncie, Assistant City Manager, with us. We have Philip Uridia, Assistant City Manager. We have Gloria Gonzalez is a contract supervisor with the utility maintenance area. Farrah Hernandez is our CIP coordinator in the public works area. We have Joe Tucker from our assistant city engineer. I'm not sure if Yvonne Hamaikan is on, who's another is our city engineer. And then Vanessa Ramirez is the deputy director of public works and utilities. And she will be the lead for this office, for the city's office here. You won't have to listen to me as much as you've already had to in the future. So she's very adept, and I'll go ahead and turn this over to Vanessa, I believe.
Yes, thank you. So our first order of business would be to consider and appoint a chair, vice chair, and secretary. And so I want to open it up to the committee to see if there's any discussion among who wants to be appointed or if there's any nominations.
I nominate Mr. Landgraf as the chair.
I would like to second that.
Sounds like a railroad job to me.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now, do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Mike Withrow.
Second that.
Okay. We have, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. And then, do we have any nominations for secretary?
What are those duties involved, Vanessa? I mean, realistically, they don't have to take notes. That's gonna all be recorded and everything, right?
So normally it's recorded. We will have city staff that will take notes, and we'll probably be the ones to get with the secretary just to make sure that they approve of the minutes before the prior or the next meeting. At which point you guys would then approve the minutes, but they would work closely with city staff to make sure that all of that is taken care of.
Billy, you can do that, can't you?
Yes, sir. I'm good with that. If it's
All right.
okay with the rest of the group.
I'm
Yeah,
nominating Roberto.
I'll second it.
I'm going to nominate Philly too.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Great. The motion passes. The next item on the agenda was discussing and determining the terms of service for all of the members. However, we would like to see if we can move the discussion of the meeting schedule prior to that. That way you guys are aware of the time commitment that's needed before we determine the terms. So if that's okay with you guys, we'll go ahead and move forward that way. So from now, as Tom mentioned earlier, the process that we're going through right now is the study for the council to determine whether they want to implement impact fees and adopt the study for the city. Until we get to that point, I think city staff would recommend that we meet once a month so that you guys can get together and review information and discuss the data that is given to you guys from both the city and the consultants. And so we just wanted to get your thoughts on whether that is feasible for your schedule. And if so, is there a specific date and time that works for everyone so we can have that set as a set date and time for every month? From now until, I think we're looking into possibly maybe March or April.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think once a month is good. We'll be getting, I would think, quite a bit of reading material and understanding what some of the other communities are doing. So there'll probably be not a lot, but some potential homework between our meetings that'll be very important for everyone to do, I envision. So everybody good with once a month? I like Vanessa's recommendation.
That's good. Middle of the month would be better for me, to be honest, John, if we can do that.
Okay. Anybody have any other input as far as times and stuff? I know.
I just have a question as far as if I know the date and the time. I mean, I can pretty much set my schedule. But I mean, for whatever reason, vacations come up, meetings with our jobs, come up. What is the quorum that needs to be here? In other words, if I'm not here for that one meeting, does that we don't have quorum anymore and we can't have a meeting? Or because again, that would be something that we need to consider in a way, no?
Yes, and the quorum is really just a majority, so we would need at least 4 of the members present to be able to proceed with any business.
Like I said, I'm pretty open, just as long as I know the date and the time. I can usually, I'm going to say I feel pretty good about being able to work around it to make sure that I can attend.
Well, let's pick a time. I mean, is this 4 o'clock in the afternoon good? Is 11 o'clock in the morning? I mean, is there a preference on anybody on time? I'm kind of like Philly. If I know what it is and can get it on my schedule, we can pretty much work around it in most cases. So
About 3 3 in the afternoon works good for me.
What time, Richard?
3 o'clock, 3 p.m.
Okay.
Set a specific
Wednesday,
date.
yeah, Wednesday afternoons seem to be at that time kind of open for me. I have city council and planning and zoning and different things on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Mondays. So would like the second or third Wednesday of the month. Would that work for most people?
Yes, sir. That'd be great.
Second
Yeah, that
Wednesday?
was good for me.
That's good for you, Joe? Richard, you good for
Yes, sir.
second Wednesday?
Second. Second.
I'm good.
Second Wednesday at 3 p.m. And we'll do them virtual. And Vanessa, you will be sending out the meeting request for us or Gloria or somebody, right?
Yes, we will go ahead and send that out, but since we are agreeing on the second Wednesday at 3 p.m., what we can do is we can tentatively set our next meeting for December 9th at 3 p.m. And then we will follow up with an email reminder and then a meeting invitation.
And let's go ahead and just send the whole calendar out, say through March, with one of those emails, and then everybody will just get that on their calendar tentatively, and then you can send the individual meeting invitations as appropriate.
Okay, we can do that.
Dr. Goetz, are you hearing any of this?
I was just going to say, if he's able to hit the chat option, if he needs to, he can send in comments to the chat and we can relay them as well. But hopefully he's able to hear what's going on.
Okay, so we can also follow up with Dr. Goetz afterwards, Farah or myself will, and just make sure that he's good with that and then follow up with you guys.
Okay, great.
The next item was discussion and determination of the terms of service for every member. And so again, staff would recommend that the terms be for 4 years. That way they coincide with the term limits of our council members. And since we do want to have staggered terms so that we have some consistency of the members on the committee all times, would have for 3 of the members an initial term of 2 years, after which we would then be appointed for 4-year terms. Is everyone okay with that, or was there further discussion that you guys wanted to throw out?
Vanessa, say that again. I think you were breaking up.
So since we were wanting to have staggered terms, we would want what city staff is recommending is 4-year terms for every member. But in order to have staggered terms, the initial term for 3 of the members would be 2 years. And then the appointment for that specific position on the committee would be a 4-year term after that.
Okay, I'm the oldest guy on the committee, so I'll take a 2-year term.
I think briefly also we can say that this first year is going to be the busiest the committee probably is for some time. That's just my understanding, and then in following years, there will be at least 2 meetings a year, but not necessarily once a month, because you won't have to make changes unless the city or the committee finds that there's a need for us to redress some things. But just for your information, so you know, this year will be the most intensive, and then after that, it'll probably drop back quite a bit. And then, and when we say the terms, of course, the council members will be certainly open to appointing or otherwise as they may seem fit. It would be what I would understand.
I would agree with the 4-year service term. with an option of reappointing from the new person, if that's okay. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense as far as, because sometimes, people want to continue on, or because I think if we just do 4 years and not allow to continue, but are we appointees, right? Or recommended people? How do we work?
You have all been drafted. No, you're.
How did we get here, Tom? I mean, are we appointed by a specific council person?
Yes, you are.
And that's obviously subject to change here in a couple of weeks. So,
yes, and expectation, I think, and Cindy or Philip or Michael, if he's here, might have a different interpretation. But this is what I expect: is that we're starting the process that your appointments would be good for at least this year. We would hope. If a council member comes on and wants to appoint someone else, I would guess that they could address that with the appointee from their section, their part of town, their district, and see if that's something that they want to do. But we would really appreciate, since this is the first time we're doing the study and that type of thing, we'd like for the people that are here now to be able to continue through the process. And of course, people may have to get off if they have to, and all that. It's life, everybody needs to. But anyway, so.
Okay. Do we need a couple of other people to agree to a 2-year term?
So I also need at least.
And my council member's up for reelection 2 years, so 2 years would be good for me.
Okay. Is that okay, Vanessa?
So we have Mike Withrow, Richard Pierce. John, you wanted a 2-year term as well?
Yes, or Joe said he would, or it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
However.
Okay, and then we will have Mr. Randall for a 4-year term, Dr. Goetz for a 4-year term, and then Philly for a 4-year term. Does that work for you guys?
That's good.
Good.
You may be screaming to get off here in about a month. You never know.
Okay. Okay. So that concludes all of the business portion. The next item on the agenda was turning it over to Kimberly Horn and John for the presentation.
Vanessa, I think we did we go ahead? No, we got. I'm sorry. Good.
Okay, so then I will go ahead and turn it over to John, and he will proceed with the presentation on Impact Fee 101.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. I'm going to proceed to share my screen as a video, kind of a PowerPoint type presentation. What I'm going to do to help the bandwidth and communication is go ahead and stop the video. And if you guys, to help the process more, there's really no reason to keep on video. So the connection may do a little bit better for everybody if we're off video while I'm doing the presentation. So I'm just sharing that with you here. So let me do what I can to get the presentation up and running, and then y'all can let me know if you see it before I continue. Okay, do y'all see it's in big letters across the middle. It says Impact Fee 101 presentation.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me kind of
Yeah.
want to fix my stuff here a second. Apologize for the delay. I'm trying to. Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to get started. Okay, we've done several introductions, so I appreciate once again for this group the willingness to be a part of helping the community as part of being part of the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. Our goal for this meeting is to introduce the concept of municipal impact fees and spend time answering your questions about the concept. Okay, the slide you see here is the City of Odessa historical population graph showing y'all's population growth over the last 10 years. After 2008-2009 recession, Odessa's experienced about 2% annual growth in population. In response to that growth, the city has developed planning tools such as the Comprehensive Plan in 2016, the Water, Wastewater, and Transportation Master Plans in 2019. The Water and Wastewater and Transportation Plans provided projects and cost to accommodate additional future growth. One of the items we provided in the master plan was a pro forma, which reviews how the city would pay for infrastructure related to growth. One of the funding tools the state allows cities is to utilize impact fees, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So over the next couple of months, you'll be seeing my partners and I, as we assist the engineering group in the city, engage with you guys, the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee, the City Council, and the general public through attendance at the council meetings. Through those series of public meetings, the goal will be to approve the impact fee study and potentially adopt impact fees if the council so desires. Okay, here are the kind of things we're going to go talk about a little bit. This is the outline. So it's the role of the, a lot of times we'll say CIAC, that's kind of the acronym for Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. We're going to talk a little bit of municipal finance history. We'll also talk about benefits, impact fees. I'll give you a revenue example, and then we'll talk about schedule. Okay, role of the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. During the adoption process, which is the very beginning here, you will be reviewing the land use assumptions and provide written comments to the City Council, which a lot of times are just the minutes of the meeting.
I'm in the meeting.
Hold off a second there. Okay, the next thing would be reviewing the impact fee capital improvements plan, or what we call the CIP, and provide comments to the City Council. And then lastly, it would be reviewing the impact fee and provide comments to the council. The state law requires a minimum of 2 meetings by the CIC. The first meeting would include both reviewing the land use assumptions and the impact fee CIP. And then the second meeting will include reviewing the resulting maximum assessable fees for roadway, water, and wastewater. Because this is Odessa's first time to consider impact fees, we've built additional follow-up meetings into the schedule if needed. I think John had kind of mentioned something about needing to study and spend some extra time, and that should allow us to do that sort of thing. If the council decides to implement impact fees, you'll have additional role between that happens between the 5-year required updates. State law requires that at a minimum, that the study gets looked at again every 5 years because of planning changes that can happen in a community. Those activities that you'll be responsible for will be monitor and evaluate the implementation of the impact fee CIP, file a semi-annual report, that's twice a year, and then advise on needed updates or revisions to the council. Okay, municipal finance history. First bit of history regarding municipal finance and how impact fees came to be. Kind of go back a little bit here post World War II. In the 50s, the federal funds were channeled to urban renewal, housing, and interstate highway type projects. In the 60s, additional federal monies were put forward towards Great Society programs under the Johnson administration. Examples of that were like Medicare, Medicaid, environmental legislation associated with things like the Clean Air Act, the Water Quality Act, and also additional support for arts and humanities. By the 70s, federal government also was providing mass transit and environmental infrastructure grants, as well as community development block grants. As a result of the federal funding, property values varied with supply and demand, where high demand for expectations of local services led to rapid inflation on property values. So much so that in the late 70s, Texas lawmakers passed the Pavetta Bill, which reformed the administration of local property taxes. They were too varied in how they were evaluated in each community and county. So the state legislature set forward these key rules of separating appraisals from tax collection, assessing properties at full market value, and then requiring reassessment once every 3 years. Then in the 1980s, the federal domestic spending decreased as a percentage of total federal spending. State and local shares of domestic spending increased, resulting in states having to adopt additional revenue source mechanisms. This resulted in the eventual burden of revenue raising responsibilities falling on local governments. This became the origin of the impact fee legislation. In fact, in 1987, just prior to the recession of the late 80s and early 90s, Texas was actually the first state to grant authorities to local governments to adopt impact fees, which were later codified as Chapter 395 of the Texas Local Government Code. So how does Chapter 395 define impact fees? Well, this is a long legal definition that's actually in the law. But to put it simply, it's a one-time fee for future development. It's meant to serve as a mechanism to recover infrastructure costs required to serve future development. So we'll roll into some of the benefits. So what are some of the benefits for adopting impact fees? Local governments have funding mechanisms in place to pay for infrastructure. I like to think of this as kind of a funding toolbox. You can see some of the funding options that cities have today in their general fund. That's the sales tax revenue that comes in. Cities can sell bonds like general obligation bonds or certificates of obligation or even revenue bonds. You pay for things out of your water and sewer rates. Cities can also create a drainage utility, a transportation utility, and of course there's public sector partnership on projects. And another funding tool is what we're talking about here today. That's impact fees or other tools in that toolbox also. But they are very specifically used for funding infrastructure necessitated by growth or development. So in Texas, impact fees are allowed for roadway, water, wastewater, and drainage. Other states have school district, police, fire, parks, maybe even library impact fees, but the state of Texas does not allow impact fees for those types of services. In Texas, the city can collect money through developers' required escrow, or they can use impact fees. Escrow monies are required to be spent in very specific areas as defined by an agreement between maybe a developer and the city. Chapter 395, the impact fee law, gives cities freedom, or what we call flexibility, to spend the money on high priority projects within a broader service area, not necessarily just right near the development that may be developing. And this leads to more of a balanced funding combination that recognizes the benefit of growth. So it's a combination of city funds that are available through impact fees along with developer partnership along the way. Okay, we'll move into development benefits to developers. First of all, it's equitable. barring any existing ordinances, development pays an equal fee whether they are the first to develop or the last to develop. Predictable. Fee schedules can be made available online. Developers can rely on land use and impact fee CIP plans to make decisions about when, where, and what to build. Ensures accountability. Chapter 395 requires that impact fees be spent within a certain amount of time or be refunded to the property owner. Proportional, directly related to the amount of demand generated by the development. So developer impact fee is proportional to their use on the system. Okay, at this point you may be asking what items are payable or not payable. Components that can be paid for through the impact fee program: construction costs related to capital improvements on the impact fee CIP, such as roadway, water and sewer, and signals and sidewalks and those things. Survey and engineering fees are eligible. Land acquisition costs, including court awards. Debt service for projects that are on the impact fee CIP, and the planning studies. Components that cannot be paid for through impact fee program: projects not included on the impact fee CIP, repair, operation, and maintenance of existing facilities, upgrade to serve existing development, administrative costs for operating the impact fee programs. So staff time on that program is not eligible. Okay, so I want to jump to what does this all lead to when you talk about impact fees? Where does the dollars go? The best way to show you is an example of potential revenue generation that can occur. So I'll explain. Here's a particular slide that we've developed, and I'll kind of walk through it very slowly so everybody understands what we're looking at here. If you look at the title across the top, what it's saying is the previous 2-year impact revenue potential. So what we did, we went back and talked to city staff and utilizing Odessa's 2018 and 2019 building permit information along with historic growth. We then took that growth information, and then the city of Midland has recently adopted impact fees back in just this past year in 2019. So what we did was utilize the city of Odessa's growth numbers in 2018 and 2019, and then applied the city of Midland's currently adopted fee to show how much revenue the city of Odessa would have accrued if they supposedly adopted Midland's fees in 2018 and 2019. Obviously, this is a hypothetical, but I want to give you an order of magnitude to know what kind of revenue generation that creates. So, and then the third bar that you see on here is we looked at the annualized capital cost exposure over the next for the 10-year impact fee CIP. So what we did was look at the total 10-year impact fee CIP program total cost, and then we divided that out over a 10-year period, and it shows hypothetically if you built all the infrastructure that's shown on the current plan and you divided that out over the next 10 years, and that includes roadway, which is the orange kind of box here, the blue, which is water projects, and green being wastewater projects, you would need about $35 million a year. And as far as what dollars would come in the door that could help offset that, these are the numbers you see, the $4.6 million and the basically about 4.4 is what you would have brought in. So it gives you an order of magnitude of the kind of revenues that the city could potentially generate using Midland's current impact fee schedule that they have. So continuing on, schedule. In November of last year, we first met with the city council to kind of give them a presentation to talk about the consideration of impact fees. They were interested enough to enter into a contract with Kimley Horn Associates in the spring of this year. And then currently here in the fall, we are working through the study and trying to complete the study. Obviously, we'll be coming forward with you to you all to give recommendations on the study. And if changes need to occur, we can make those as we finalize the report itself. So moving into the near future, as far as schedule goes here, we talked about meeting in December. And that first meeting can be a review of the land use assumptions in the impact fee capital improvement plan. And then in January, we could meet again to recommend approval, if you so choose, of the land use assumptions in impact fee CIP that would go to council. And then the next step in February would be to meet and review the impact fee study itself as a whole that has the actual maximum assessable fee calculations in it. And then you could meet again in March to make a recommendation on approval of the study itself, and then potentially give recommendations to council on what you thought the fee might want to be if you would want to consider moving forward. So that's our presentation to kind of give you a brief overview. I have additional detailed slides if want to get into the technical weeds a little bit, but that's our presentation. I'll open it up to any kind of questions that you may have at this particular time. And I'll be happy to go back to other slides that I showed and illustrated if you have questions.
John, make that presentation, those slides available to Vanessa so she can get them out to the whole committee, please, sir.
I will do that. I think she's actually got a copy that she could send out today.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
I do. I can send that out right after this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So is there any particular questions, or we feel like we're just kind of wrapping our heads around this, getting started?
John, this is Landgraf.
Yes, sir.
And I haven't seen your study yet, and you haven't completed it, so this may be off base a little bit, but did you compare other communities our size? I know you mentioned Midland. Have we looked at Abilene, Lubbock, San Angelo, enough other communities in West Texas with similar sizes and similar, and see what they're also doing? I think that's always good information.
Yeah, absolutely. That's obviously one of the very first things that most communities ask is, how do we compare to our neighbors, if you will? Obviously, your closest neighbor is Midland. Lubbock has just passed impact fees very recently too. Their decision was to do roadway impact fees and not charge water and wastewater impact fees. El Paso has impact fees. I think they have water and wastewater, but don't have roadway impact fees.
I would like to see maybe a matrix of San Angelo, Lubbock, Abilene, El Paso, Midland, the West Texas comparable cities, and then maybe throw in. I'm asking for a lot. It sounds like. I hope that's
fine.
Not a problem.
Yeah, that's what this meeting's about.
And maybe one or two Metroplex examples that I know y'all have worked with,
right?
Just of similar size, not Dallas or Fort Worth, but some of the smaller growing communities.
Some that are in the 120,000 people range.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I know there's many more in the Metroplex area, and then kind of more down the I-35 corridor than there is out in West Texas. So to increase your comparatives, we may have to grab a few of those.
Okay, thank you.
Abilene, San Angelo, Lubbock,
Midland.
Yeah, Midland. Okay. Yes, sir.
Hey, John, I have a question. As far as on the impact fees, are we going to be doing this
for certain areas that we're going to develop, and every time that somebody wants to develop, we're going to vote to see if they have to pay an impact fee, or if we vote to have the impact fees, it's just going to be a blanket for any project that happens throughout the year.
Correct. That's kind of part of, I'll go back in the little, let me go back to my presentation and talking about the, if you look at this particular, can y'all still see the slides?
Yes, sir, I can.
Let's see here if it says it. Fee schedule developers can rely on. It doesn't really equitable being that as soon, I'll just answer the question directly. That if the council so chooses to enact impact fees, what we'll bring forward in the study will be the maximum assessable fee that the city could charge. And
Okay.
let's say that's $5,000. I'm just kind of making up a random number right now. The city can charge no more than $5,000, but they can charge all the way down to zero. So that's what the study's about, and it gives you the information, and then that's where a business decision, if you will, via y'all's recommendation and considerations, along with eventually the council, obviously, is the one that's the final approver of that. But then that fee is set, and any development that comes in would be subject to that fee based on their usage. So an example of that would be, let's say a big box retail store, kind of like a Walmart or so, comes in, and I'll just focus on water a minute. And they need a 2-inch water meter for their facility, which is a pretty decent sized meter. That meter, as compared to a house that might just use a 3/4 inch meter, the ratio between the capacity of a 3/4 inch meter and that 2-inch meter, which can be about 5 or 6 times as much, that's how much greater the impact fee would be for the Walmart versus a single home.
Okay.
So, yeah, so if you said $5,000 hypothetically for the water, it's not going to be that high, but that would be a number. And if Walmart came in and needed the larger meter that's 5 times bigger, they would pay 5 times that 5, which is $25,000 would be what the Walmart would pay. Does that give you kind of a example of how it's based on the capacity or the need of the development type? And
John, aren't some of those based on acreage of property?
No, it's not. It's if we're working on roadway, it's a little bit more complicated, but it's based on a vehicle mile of usage, basically how much traffic the business generates. And when we bring the reports forward,
okay,
about it, we will detail some of that technical side, the technical side of that to you, and let you get comfortable with how those calculations come about. And so,
are those statutorily set forth how those calculations are done?
they are done they are done by engineers with experience. So the law requires that the city can't do the work in-house. That's why I'm involved.
Okay.
That's why Kimley Horn's involved. The statute's very clear that you cannot arbitrarily pick and choose those numbers to set those fees, that they have to be mathematically calculated. A lot of times you'll hear the term rough proportionality and mathematical exactitude. And so rough proportionality means it's the demand of a particular development type, its usage or demand on the infrastructure system. And then its mathematically exactitude is our mathematical, there's a very specific formula for how you calculate that maximum accessible fee. And we will share that with you as we move forward on how we did the math.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'll look at that.
No, these are all great questions. Yes, so we have a presentation that gets more into the weeds on that kind of stuff. that's not part of necessarily reviewing the report itself. But we wanted to just make this particular meeting more of a treetop type of exercise. I can get into some of those. In fact, I think some of the slides associated with what you're talking about are hidden within the bottom half of this presentation if you wanted me to show you some of that, but it may be better to wait until we can see real City of Odessa numbers.
Yeah, we'll wait for your presentation. No problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have one more question, John. As far as, and I think I already know the answer, but I want to verify.
Sure.
Let's say we didn't have impact fees. What taxes would be used to pay for this, and how would it impact the community? As far as, are we using property taxes, or if that's what would have been used?
Yeah, for if you're talking about roadway infrastructure, it usually it's funded out of your. I'll go back to see if I can find the.
And I'm sorry if you've already talked about it.
No, that's okay. Let me show you. Let me use this as the way to talk about that. Can y'all see my cursor when I put it up on the screen? At the it's in the middle of the bond fund box.
Yes.
I don't know if y'all can see it.
There you go.
Y'all see that?
Okay.
Yeah.
So roadway projects typically get funded out of your general fund. And of course, your general fund typically doesn't have enough cash reserves to fund a $30 million roadway project. So what you end up doing is selling bonds. The city will sell or issue general obligation bonds. And of course, municipal bonds are very low interest rate type bonds. It's a good, healthy way for cities to get the money to build larger projects. And then basically you pay back the loan, a low interest loan through bonds, and that money comes out of your general fund and it pays the interest plus the principal on just like paying off your house. So it might be a 20-year note or a 30-year note kind of thing.
I'm sorry, this is Tom, and generally your general fund is going to be made up of your ad valorem taxes, so your property taxes and the sales taxes.
That's what I was asking. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry, I'm very long-winded way to get to. Tom gave you the direct answer.
No, you didn't.
No problem, John.
Your water projects, your water and sewer projects typically get paid out of your water and sewer rates. So part of the nuance of this is if you don't have impact fees, there's two ways to pay for new infrastructure. One, you can ask the developer to fit a significant portion of it. Let's say it's kind of far out of town and there is no water and sewer out there today. A hard line could be that the city goes, well, developer, if you want water and sewer infrastructure out to your property, then you build it. That's kind of the extreme on, hey, developer, if you want it, you build it. The other would be, hey, developer comes in, city wants them there, so they fit the bill for building it out to the future development, which puts the burden on the current taxpayers or ratepayers to be funding those projects for future development. The combination in between can be a public-private partnership where both share the load. And then another one is impact fees. And we will work through the details of how that's calculated, and I will obviously be bringing forward more details of how that applies and fits into the box of all of these funding mechanisms. Does that help a little bit?
Oh yeah, no, of course, and the general fund is the one that really explained to me what feeds the general fund is basically what I was asking also. So
yeah,
but no, thank you thank you so much.
Yeah. So yeah, this exercise is as much of a financial exercise as it is an engineering exercise. So it's a marriage of both. And of course, we bring on a financial consultant that does some background work on this exercise too, that We keep them back in the closet. We don't let them out. That's
Hey,
perfect.
John, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, this is Dr. Goetz. I have been gone. I unfortunately had a emergency patient that I had to see. To try to answer some of the last questions I heard for Filiberto asking, the general fund pays for everything. You enhance the general fund with bonding, and impact fees eventually go into the general fund. Correct?
No, the city will have to set up an independent account for the impact fees.
Like a franchise.
Yeah, it
like
has
we
to
do
say,
for water.
yes, it
Like
will
we
have
do
to
for
say,
water and sewer.
yeah, because the projects that we'll bring forward to you in the impact fee capital improvement program are the only projects that would be eligible to be funded with the impact fee impact fee dollars revenue that
Right.
comes in.
Well, what I'm getting at is it doesn't, impact fees in actuality don't lower your taxes.
No, they just help.
They are an enhancement.
Correct. Maybe you can delay, possibility of delaying an increase, if you have enough money.
Right.
It obviously it ebbs and flows with growth. So the more growth you have, therefore you have more impact fee dollars coming in, but at the same time, you're needing to build the infrastructure to accommodate that growth.
John,
Right.
it's a way to not issue certificates of obligation also, right? I mean, it would lessen that impact by creating impact fees, would be paying for some of the same things that we currently are doing with COs.
Yeah, and you can actually pay the debt off of those COs if you want. So you can go ahead and issue a CO for one of those impact fee projects and then pay the interest off too. When you first start out, there's not a lot of money in the fund.
Right.
So you can't do a lot with it at the beginning. But you do have it kind of come in and go out pretty regularly because, like I said in one of the slides, the city becomes they become obligated. The time starts ticking when you start bringing the money in. That you're obligated to build the projects needed for growth.
John, could you go back to the slide that indicated, just an example of revenue potential based on Midlands type of assessment?
Sure. Yeah.
Dr. Goetz may not have seen this. I'm not sure if he did.
Okay. Dr. Goetz, did you see this? If not, I'll explain it again if you want me to.
I've got it. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Well, what we did here was look at the city of Odessa's growth over in 2018 and 2019, and then made an assumption if you had implemented the city of Midlands impact fee over those 2 years, the 4.6 million and the almost $4 million that you see here are what would have come into the city's coffers if you would have applied Midlands current impact fee. And then the bar to the far right is, as we move into the future over the next 10 years, we've identified an annual expenditure of approximately $35 million of infrastructure if everything grows like the land use assumptions plan that we show in the study. So we'll be talking about those kind of things.
So the bar on the right is right now it's very rough because we haven't come to you yet with those land use assumptions and with that capital plan that would be tied to that. But we took projects that we are expecting might end up on that 10-year schedule. And then we added up the estimated costs for all those projects, the total cost. And it, just based on that rough analysis, we were at about $350 million to build all of the infrastructure out for the 10 years based on those assumptions, I hate to use that word, right? But anyway, those projections.
Yeah. Right.
And so if you just we just annualized it. So we said, okay, so you're looking at $35 million of exposure on an annual basis for 10 years. And that impact fees potentially might bring in numbers like we're seeing on the left. We don't know it all yet, but so as you can see, one, it doesn't fund it entirely. The city still has a significant burden, and the developers will also still have some burdens, obviously, but the impact fees just help with some of that. And then down the road, like John was also saying, this money doesn't come in tomorrow. A lot of this infrastructure will be necessary before the developments actually start to occur. And so it'll be a few years delayed before you start to see revenues from these. But it can help in the future as you continue to have to build, because the city may become heavily strapped for funding as we go. And if we have this to help us, it may help us to continue to be able to support the future growth.
These are all good questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll jump down to schedule real quick here. Like I mentioned, the next meeting, which will be here before you know it, is in March. I think y'all talked about the second Wednesday, which I think is December 9th. We would bring forward a portion of the report, basically, that accompanies the land use assumptions that were made. Of course, those are built on those. We didn't make those up just for this project. They're based on your comprehensive plan that was done in 2016, and they're related to the roadway or the transportation and the water and wastewater master plans that the council approved last year. So you'll see, if you've looked at those reports, you'll see a lot of common features. And then, of course, then the impact fee capital improvement plan will also be a part of that. And if you look at your master plans in relation to these projects, you'll see on the impact fee capital improvement plan, you'll see a lot of the exact same projects. The list is smaller because the list that we come up with in the impact fee CIP is purely growth related.
Yep. John, I think that's a real important distinction. And Vanessa, send us, the committee, the link. I know the city has all of those master plans linked on their website. Send us the link so that everybody can be somewhat familiar with those by our next meeting, because I think that land use is really an important deciding factor on that, because these impact fees can't be used in downtown renovation, for example, right, John? They've got to be growth oriented type of things in the areas where new growth is occurring and putting a strain on the system. So
yeah, and we'll talk. There's some nuances associated with that, John, especially on the roadway side, where the law requires that you can only make the service area for roadway a certain size. And so money's collected in a particular area. The areas are pretty large. You'll see them on the map, but money's collected in those areas can only be spent in those areas.
Right.
On water and sewer, we utilize the entire study area that was done on the master plans and have a single service area for both citywide. Now, what that allows is the city flexibility to spend monies that come in on maybe higher priority projects due to the fact that those systems are all interrelated, and a water line in one part of the city improvement can also then improve the pressure and things at other parts of the city, because it improves overall circulation and things of that nature. So we'll talk. Here's the slide that I went back to are the covers for each of those studies. So the three that John's really talking about that have background information associated very specifically to the land use and the impact fee CIPs, they all originated from these 3 studies that you see here that we completed in 2019. So the city has done a really good job of taking the appropriate steps to fall in the correct order to do these kind of studies. Once again, the impact fee study that we'll do for you guys, the study itself can actually be approved. And then if the desire was not to do impact fees, you could approve the study and then choose to do an ordinance that says we want to put $0 as your impact fees. But because you have to update every 5 years, you will have approved the study and then could enact impact fees any time in the next 5 years. So there's kind of a nuance there that you probably want to.
It's a living document.
It is.
Yes. John, let me ask you one more question. On if you were going to go in and revitalize an area, just specifically, it doesn't matter what area, say an area downtown, and you wanted to, not downtown, but in that area, and wanted to revitalize it, tear out some old homes and revitalize the area and build it, is that considered growth that you could do impact fees on?
It depends if you increase.
Similar to what they did in Lubbock, by the way.
Yeah, if you increase the capacity, well, let me just take a simple example of let's say there's an old let's say 2 houses in a block that have water and sewer service today. Maybe they're abandoned, but they do have, if you go to the meter rolls, they've got water service today at a particular size meter, and you tear those, developer comes in and wants to put some other kind of usage there, and they tear those houses down and put up usage that doesn't increase the water demand, then it doesn't qualify for needing additional impact fee dollars, or they wouldn't have to pay impact fee dollars. Now, if the demand for the new development comes in and would be twice as much need for capacity, then they would pay the difference between what's there today and what they would need into the future. That's a nuanced question.
Same thing with roads.
Same thing with roads, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Now, if you have just a vacant lot in town, in the middle of town, they would be treated just as if they were out in a greenfield area.
Right.
Yeah. Now, what some cities do, City of Denton is an example of this. Obviously their downtown area is very built out, but they are redeveloping, and the councils chose to actually not charge the downtown area. They had to clearly define the area via map, and don't charge the downtown area as much as they charge some of the greenfield areas on the outer stretches of town. But that was purely a prerogative of the council.
Was that done to incentivize the redevelopment, you think, John?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Some version of that. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And plus you don't need to build a lot of additional infrastructure in the downtown area to get those businesses up and running. It's there. It may be old and need rehabbed to some level, but they can probably come in and tie on less expensively than in a greenfield area outside of town.
Right. Well, Landgraf knows that I'm always wanting to come back inside and use our infrastructure that we have better by revitalizing some areas.
Sure. And a lot of communities are doing that.
And a lot of infill areas we have opportunities for too, but we'll talk about that in more detail later.
Right.
Yeah. Y'all are doing a great job of asking questions that are nuances that gives me the impression y'all are already getting it and understanding the concept. So I think this is going to be good. So,
John, I guess as another question, John Atkins, on that is, in the end, the council has quite a bit of discretion on how they may implement the fees as well and that type of thing. Basically.
right. That's what becomes the nuance. And of course, the advisory committee, y'all have the opportunity to provide them recommendations that gives them a starting point. What happens so much, and that's why John's question about what do other communities do gives you guys a feel of how to make a business decision, if you want to call it, about what you might want, if you so choose to move forward, what you might want to set your fees at. So it's like it's like you go, okay, where do we start? Where do we even consider, with this? Here's our maximum. Well, that's way too high. We don't want to charge that. That's okay. But what do we want to charge, and how do we make that decision? And so having information about other communities is where most people start. And we will be providing you information to make those kind of educated decisions or recommendations to council, which they'll ultimately have to make the business decision, if you want to call it that, on if they want to do this.
John or Tom, either one, when did Midland start their impact fees?
Last October, maybe?
Yes, I think they adopted them late last year.
Yeah.
And then, but
that was my memory. I just wanted to make sure my memory was correct. That was my memory too. Okay, thank you.
I think they have a phased implementation schedule too. So some of the fees don't necessarily go into effect for a year or something like that.
Well, yeah, that's one nuance that's in the law, Tom, that when they're approved, there's a year grace period for developments that are still building out, to not have to pay for a period of time. That's kind of a grace period. So there's, that's a detail in the law that becomes part of your ordinance that you have to finalize. So, but you got to realize impact fees, you're thinking long term when you're doing these kind of things. So, all good questions. If y'all don't think we're going to look at any more of the presentation, I'll stop sharing the video and we can see faces a little bigger on the screen if you want.
Sounds good, John. Doesn't sound like we have any more questions at this point.
Okay, I'll stop sharing, see if we get this correct. Okay.
So I think that was pretty much what we had scheduled for today's meeting. Unless y'all have any other discussions, just general discussion that you might want to touch on. We have a next meeting now that's proposed for when, Vanessa, I guess?
December 9th. Well, what we'll do is we will create a folder and send out a link to all of the members where y'all can go in and download all of the master plans, the comprehensive plan. We'll put a copy of this presentation in there as well. That way you guys can all go in and download, and you will have access to that. And as we continue to have these meetings, we'll just continue to put information in there for you.
This is Michael Marrero. I'm sorry to join late. And thanks all of you for your participation in this. I know from the council perspective, this is something that they certainly want to explore for a number of reasons. And I think you, as John said, you guys all get it. And I think all of you are great for this committee simply because you know this industry in and out. You also understand what the city's needs are and how difficult it is for cities to try and fund some of these things. So thanks for your participation. I will also say for some of you who want hard copies of those documents, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to print you off a copy if you prefer that. But I simply, again, want to say thanks for your participation, and I'm really looking forward to this process and working with all of you so we can bring back to the council a good recommendation on how we can move the city forward. So thanks.
Yep.
Vanessa, you said our next meeting was December the 9th?
Yes, it's tentatively set for December 9th at 3 p.m.
At 3 p.m.
Dr. Goetz, while you were off, we kind of picked the middle of the month, the second Wednesday of every month at 3 p.m. is what we set up. That hopefully that you can work your patient load around that for us.
Well, after December the 17th, it won't be a problem.
Oh, are you taking your single down?
I will be retiring.
Well, congratulations.
Well, wait a minute, Jimmy, where am I going to go?
We'll talk about that later, Michael.
Hey, Dr. Goetz, I'm glad you mentioned that because we also appointed you to a 4-year term.
I figured Landgraf and Withrow took care of me real well while I was gone.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
decided to take the 2-year terms and they gave you the 4-year term.
All right. Vanessa, am I the one that should call for adjournment, or are you still in charge?
No, you are in charge. You go ahead and ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. And
Well, I'll ask before that, is there any other information, questions, or anybody need anything before we do adjourn? City staff
This is Philly. I just sent out a chat, but other than reaching out to other cities that are already doing it, what would you recommend as homework? I guess you called it homework earlier, but because that's what I would like to do. But is there anything that you would like for us to be ready for or have information about?
John, do you mind if I say something?
No, John, you go ahead and answer that because we're good.
Yeah, I don't think you need. I can send with staff's permission. I've got a couple of articles, a little bit dated because impact fees have been around for over 30 years now, but a couple of articles that are a little bit dated, but they talk about the whole process. And then one of the lead attorneys in the state has written some commentary kind of stuff that I could forward on to Vanessa. And if she wants to make those items available just as additional information, I think with regards to looking at communities' impact fees, we will pull that kind of information together, and that will be a part of the second round of meetings when we talk about the actual impact fee itself. I think that we want to get ready to focus on, if for your next meeting, is just your land use assumptions and your impact fee capital improvements plan. So the homework.
That's where I think looking at those master plans and understanding that is the homework for next meeting, right?
That is correct. And what we'll do is pull the chapters out of our draft study that we've done already, and we will forward those on to city staff to present to you guys too. And of course, you will have that before the meeting to review.
Yeah, but Vanessa's going to put that in our what'd you call it, Vanessa?
Your folder. I'll put that in. I'm going to create a OneDrive folder. Yes.
And I think we'll also put a contact list in there so that y'all have, which most of you probably do anyway, but make sure everybody has numbers if you want to call us for any reason or something like that, you can, or even
that'd be
call
great.
John.
Put the whole committee also.
I think the whole committee, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah, very good. Good meeting.
Okay. With that said, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion.
Moved and seconded. Any opposed to adjourning? If not, thank you much, Vanessa and John. We appreciate everything, Tom, and we look forward to getting information, and we'll be prepared for our December 9th meeting. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.